Can't see this, but my dog is my personal assistant today, sitting right in front of me. Yeah, Habibi. Oh, that's nice. Thank you. What are gender affirming piercings? I cannot believe I'm talking about this. Before I show you videos about it, I want to talk a little bit about this term, gender affirming. This is a new term created by the new trans community. Transsexuals, the ones with gender dysphoria, who medically transitioned, who've always existed, haven't really used this term gender affirming, let's say gender affirming care, when describing their transitions. That's because you're not affirming your gender if you're trying to change it. For old school transsexuals, it has never been about wanting to deny biology and common sense, facts, science. We know as transsexuals that we're going against our biology when transitioning. I, as a trans guy, know that when I cut off my breasts, I wasn't affirming my gender. I was denying it. I was running away from it. The goal of our transition was to alleviate our mental disorder gender dysphoria. Why are you so needy today? We wanted to alleviate some psychological discomfort. Our intentions have never been political, ideological. But today, being trans is ideological, is political. And that's why I've made this shirt. Just because you have blue, purple, green hair and a big ass septum piercing doesn't mean that you're a transsexual. This is not a transition. I hear the term gender affirming, piercings, haircut, care all the time, and I don't really relate to it. I should, of all people, relate to this term, but I don't. Because again, my transition has never been about denying my gender. The term gender affirming refers to the false belief that a person's true gender is within their soul. So if someone transitions, if a woman cuts off her breasts, she's affirming the little boy who's trapped inside of her body. That sounds weird, but it is weird. And, not true. Today I want to react to some gender affirming piercings, and, buckle up.
So one of my favorite projects that I've done, and I've done a number of this exact project for trans masc folks, is outer labia piercings done at a larger gauge or stretched in order to wear some pretty large diameter rings. And one of the first setups like this I did for the client, we pierced them, we healed them, we put in these big diameter rings, and he messaged me a couple of weeks later and he said, "Lynn, these are terrible. They're ridiculous. They get in the way all the time. I constantly have to adjust my clothing and my pants. They get in the way. They get pinched and caught, and they can be really, really uncomfortable when that happens, and they're just super inconveniencing." And I've never been happier. See, these piercings were exactly what it would be like to have a scrotum. He had to adjust things out of the way and sit with his legs differently and walk with his legs differently to accommodate for these piercings and this jewelry. He had to deal with the discomfort of them getting pinched or tweaked in his clothing and adjust things accordingly for that. He had to move and function like he had something between his legs, because he did. And he told me that these piercings did so much for helping him pass as a man in a way of like masculinizing his body movements, the way he walked, the way he sat, the way he stood. Not that passing is the end all be all, but for this client, it was really gender affirming to have that experience and deal with those piercings in that way.
Why? I did not expect her being happy about a dissatisfied customer. Trans men don't have balls. We're women. A piercing cannot change that fact. I don't understand why we have to pretend that we're men. Like real men. We want to be men due to our gender dysphoria, but we're not stupid. We know that there's a difference between having a scrotum, having balls, and then having metal thingies down there in our labia. So I think that is the difference between actual transsexuals versus trans activists who don't know what it's like to deal with gender dysphoria, who don't transition due to alleviate mental health conditions. It is due to how it's trendy nowadays, how it'll give you brownie points, minority points. Trans activists pretend that they actually can change their sex, and that trans women, trans men are men. There's absolutely no difference. That has nothing to do with being a transsexual.
These can be piercings that are culturally or religiously gender affirming, such as nostril piercings used in rites of marriage for lots of women in cultures around the world. That can also be a little girl getting her first earlobe piercing surrounded by her mom and her sisters and her grandmas and all the women of the family who have also gotten their ears pierced as young girls, celebrating her rite of passage into girlhood or even into womanhood. It can look like people getting Monroe piercings to emulate the femininity that Marilyn Monroe had, and it can look like people getting nostril piercings with the same placement and jewelry as Tupac to replicate the masculinity he represented. But when I get tagged a lot in stuff about gender affirming piercings, it's almost always folks who want to talk about transgender affirming piercings, and more specifically genital piercings that we do for trans clients. Not every trans person wants bottom surgery, and even if folks do, it can sometimes take years and years and years to go through all the processes and jump through all the hoops of getting it. But people still deal with bottom dysphoria. Piercings in this area can be an incredible way to help alleviate bottom dysphoria, create new sensations, create new functions, especially if your functions are changing from hormones and HRT.
Did you just compare young girls, sometimes it's even babies in some cultures, getting their ears pierced, with delusional women with green hair and a communist flag in their bios, getting their labia pierced? How are labia piercings gonna alleviate bottom dysphoria? How is getting that piercing gonna do any good for trans men? They're still women, they still have a vagina. So that's why I will never do such a thing, and it's also one of the reasons why I will never get bottom surgery. In order for me to maintain good mental health, my sanity, I need to understand that I will never become a biological male. So I'm not going to risk my own life, my sexual function, the function to pee, etc., to get something that will never be a penis. If I can't snap my fingers like that and have male anatomy, and there's no difference between what I have and what a biological male has, I'm not going to get it.
Some of the most popular gender affirming piercings like that I do for trans masc folks are piercings that are designed to emulate the sensation of having balls. They kind of change the way you stand, walk, sit, move. They give the physical sensation of weight and something being there throughout the day.
Can't you just walk differently without destroying your genitals? Or without making them super weird? I can't even imagine what it looks like. I don't want to imagine. Are piercings feminine or masculine? Will they enhance masculine or feminine features? Let me know, because I'm confused.
When people say below the belt piercings can be gender affirming for trans people, they're not fucking kidding. I got one today and I'm already like, this is the best decision I've ever made in my entire life. Also, it was the least painful out of all the piercings I've had. If you're trans, I literally highly recommend looking into this because, oh my god.
As you all know, I have female genitals, obviously, and I don't have this piercing that we're talking about today. I think I pass pretty well as a man in society. No one calls me she, her, or automatically think that I'm a woman. Isn't it funny how I have achieved that without getting weird piercings in my genitals? It's almost like most people don't get to see them. And whenever I hear about people getting this gender-affirming piercing, they always do not pass as the opposite sex. So that is what doesn't make sense to me. Why won't you work on your transition? Working on trying to look like the opposite sex instead of doing weird things to your genitals. It's almost like passing is not the goal for these people.
So one thing about me as a piercer is I would not just pierce any man's genitalia, just because I'm alone here in the shop most of the time, and also just makes me feel uncomfortable. But if you are a trans guy, just bring your packer. I just did that today and it was so fun, and it looked so cool. Get those packers pierced, y'all. Do it.
You pierced a dildo? I mean, respect the hustle, you're getting money for piercing a dildo. Wow, it's so weird how you're not comfortable with working on biological males, but you are comfortable working on trans men. I wonder why. It's almost like trans men are biological females. So my question for you is, are you comfortable working on trans women? Because there are biological males, it's a fact. I mean, this whole topic is about genitals, so you can't really run away from that fact. Are you uncomfortable being alone with a penis or not? It sounds like you are, so the answer to my question should be no. I'm not comfortable with the trans women when I'm alone. But I have a feeling that you don't want to answer the question, or you would answer yes, of course. Slay queens. That's all I have for today's video. What do you think about gender affirming piercings? Does the concept make sense to you, or are you equally as confused as me? If you want to see more content like this, make sure that you hit subscribe and the notification bell. I love you all, and I cannot wait to see you in the comments down below. Peace out.